To our webinar on how to be an employer of choice. Really thrilled to have you with us. My name is Heather Marano. I am the Director of Awards Consultancy Green.co, and my guest today is Ali Killaly, who is the Managing Director of Inspiring Workplaces Australasia. Welcome, Ali.
Thanks so much for having me, Heather.
We're thrilled to have you. I think this is going to be such an interesting topic. Being positioned as an employer of choice is one of the most important things I think that a business can do these days in order to attract and retain excellent talent, which we all know is such a strategic priority. And one of the best ways to do that is through award success. So I was really excited to kind of delve into that a little deeper and take a specific look at the Inspiring Workplaces Australasia Awards program, because unlike a lot of the other employer of choice awards options that are on the Australian market and international market, this one I think is such a powerful, prestigious award, but is also actually quite cost effective to enter, which is very unusual and a major selling point. So it's worth mentioning. So I'm thrilled to have you here to kind of go through a lot of that. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we jump in. You'll notice to our lovely attendees that you're all in listen-only mode for now. That's just because we've got a bit of content to get through. We will open the floor to questions at the end if you'd like to turn your mic and camera on. But in the meantime, if you've got a question, you can drop it into the chat. You'll see that in the top right-hand corner. Drop that in. We'll address it throughout the course of this webinar if you do have any questions. Okay. So before we jump in, and I've got loads of questions to ask you, Ali, I want to give everyone a little bit of background on who you are. So Ali is the Director of Inspiring Workplaces Australasia. As we said, that's a really powerful employer of choice focused awards program in the Australasia market. Inspiring Workplaces is global. Obviously, we're talking about Australasia today. And she's an authority on this program. Ali's also got a lot of experience in this broader space, consulting in employee engagement and so forth, which I'm sure she'll talk to us about today. So I'm really excited to kind of pick your brain, Ali. And as I said before, I'm the Director of Green.co. So essentially what we do is we help businesses enter and win awards, often employer of choice awards, and we manage that process end to end. So that's a little bit about us. So without further ado, let's jump in and ask some great questions. Okay, so the question that's posed in the headline of this webinar is a bit of a bold one, which is, can you afford to not be an employer of choice in the current environment? I'm interested, Ali, to get your thoughts on it. Why do you think that kind of recognition of being an inspiring workplace or an employer of choice is really crucial right now, particularly in the current climate? And what do you think is the return on investment to be recognised as such from your perspective?
And it is a bold statement. I think we should call you Big Call Marano on this one, because, you know, it is a bold statement. But I wonder, like, if we step back first and talk about like this current climate, why that's relevant right now, because there is a lot going on, and I think it depends on where you're sitting as to what that looks like and how it impacts you. So, you know, geographically, how are you impacted by things that are going on? The industry you're in, for example, you know, it's a different story in professional services, say, versus healthcare, but there are a bunch of things happening in the world that are influencing the world of work and employers and their brands. And to touch on a few, it would be the shifts we're seeing in migration policy have an impact. The shifts we're seeing in employment law. New Zealand, part of our Australasia bubble, is experiencing recession. And we have, in Australia, we have this wavering inflation. We don't know which way it's going to go and what it's doing at the moment. We have productivity challenges. We have this massive AI revolution. And so there is a lot of things, there are a lot of factors disrupting the world of work right now. And so the Employer of Choice Award, I think, it's vital, because it is, particularly the way we do it in Inspiring Workplaces, it's evidence of good practice. It's vital for trust and transparency with everything else that's going on. And Inspiring Workplaces is centered around people first, this idea of people first, which is so relevant given this disruptive stage we're in with AI, redundancies. And so I think it's so valuable. The return on investment for people participating in it is that they are part of a learning community, so they're inspiring as well as being inspired, and they can benchmark, and they can also find something to celebrate when everything is in flux. That would be my take. Yeah,
that is such a good point, actually. And I think one that maybe isn't often raised, which is that because of the current environment, things are so much in flux, and we can't control all of that. What we can control is trying to do the things we can to make our workplaces inspiring places to be, so that we can keep morale high. We can, reassure people that we are presenting a great workplace where they're going to, have purpose and drive. And if for those when we're attracting talent, that they can get a bit of a sense of that. That's a nice kind of conduit or balance to all the uncertainty that sort of is unfortunately, just as you said, occurring in the market. So I think that's a really interesting point. I know for us with clients that have entered a series of employer of choice style awards, it has been a really good way for them to just reassure and reiterate with their staff that this is a great place to work, and remind them of that, because in those periods of flux and uncertainty, you can kind of forget, that maybe your workplace actually has a lot going for it and is a great place to work, and it's just a great motivator, and it definitely is a differentiator for attracting great talent. And we all know how important it is at the moment. So yeah, I think it's really beneficial. And if you have a reputation as the opposite in the market, I just think it's just not going to, it absolutely is not going to serve you, and it's probably more of a disadvantage than ever before. Yes, that's right, exactly. Yeah. So I think awards programs like Inspiring Workplaces is such a great way to just sort of help manage that narrative, and also, like, it's not just about positioning, it's not just a PR exercise, it's actually about reviewing what you're doing and like auditing what you're doing. That's really important as well. Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. So I think that probably takes me pretty well into my next point, which is I'd love to know a little bit more about the Inspiring Workplaces program and what makes it different from other awards programs that are out there. What's specific about it makes it a great choice for businesses looking into those sorts of awards?
I'm so keen to hear your take on this, Heather, because I think you see so many of the alternatives, and I think we know our positioning quite well. And so I have a couple of key points of difference that I want to point out, but I would also love to get your take. I think one point of difference is that from the smallest of small businesses through to multinational organisations, Inspiring Workplaces is for any business. And that's evident in the fact that in 2025, it was a 40-person team from tax traders in New Zealand that took out first place for Australasia. And then they joined the company of brands like PepsiCo and IKEA. So I think that is a key point of difference. Another one I also think is that it's part of a global program. So you will definitely get credit and insight in your region, which is really important. For some organisations, they have aspirations of being multinational or have a global customer base, and this is fantastic for that, because you're then plugged into the kind of recognition and credibility that is transferable around the world. So I think that's another key point of difference. And that appealing to different economies, given what I mentioned earlier about recessions and uncertainty of financial markets, is also a good future-proofing strategy. How are you considered around the world? But then I also think, there's also this insight we have about HR folks and people and culture people really yearning for a way to connect and learn and be inspired. So we have the chance to celebrate you and recognize the wonderful things you're doing, but we also give you the opportunity to be part of a learning cycle that happens from the awards, and then it carries on throughout the year. So we have the 24-hour PeopleFirst Summit that goes around the world, where we talk to thought leaders and winners. We have in-person roundtables. We have reports, exclusive reports about the strategies and insights that we gather as part of this process too. And I think it is at a very low bar to entry in terms of not necessarily the quality of your application. We want to see great applications, but the entry price is not so high that it would exclude you. Yeah. So
I'd agree with that.
My take.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right. I mean, to your point, you know, wanting to hear from me, obviously, given we've entered all sorts of Employer of Choice awards, that was the first thing that stuck out to me, because I'm always obviously looking at, you know, what's going to work for our clients in terms of budget and that sort of thing. And some of these Employer of Choice awards can cost like $3,000 more, $4,500. So I'm talking about ones like the Australian Business Awards has an Employer of Choice award, and like AFR, Best Places to Work. It's tiered based on business size. So, you know, you're not necessarily going to be paying that, but you're generally paying thousands of dollars. So that's a major barrier to entry for a lot of businesses. I think the second thing you hit on as well is really powerful, is that if you're a smaller business, or, you know, an SME or whatever, mid-sized, you're not, again, shut out of the process. So some of those awards, not only are they really expensive, they tend to recognise the top end of town, the corporates. And so having an awards program that actually represents everyone is a much better equalizer. And there aren't that many options like that, aside from the odd Employer of Choice category in, say, like a regional award. There's not actually that many workplace Employer of Choice culture awards that actually tap into businesses of that size. So that's a major differentiator. The other one, and I guess we'll get into this when we talk about the application process. So it's a written application, is it not? Ali, there's not a survey component in this, is there? So that is another point of difference. So a lot of the other awards will have a survey component, which can be quite onerous to kind of manage. So, you know, obviously that can be valuable. It has its place. A lot of companies are already doing that. They don't need to be doing it in an awards program. So it's like it's double handling. It ends up being a bit of a burden, because often you need to get a certain amount of responses in order to actually be able to submit. So it's this constant chase of your teams. And I know that becomes really burdensome for a number of our clients. And if they're doing that stuff already, which often they are, because they're employers of choice, so they track that, they're already doing it, it's burdensome to have to do it again. So I think it's nice to know that this program doesn't require that. It, again, lowers that barrier to entry. I guess all of those 3 points really lower the barrier to entry. And I love to see that, because we predominantly work with SMEs. And so having an option that is just accessible and affordable makes a huge difference. So yeah, I think that's my perspective to build on yours, Ali.
It's good to hear it. Yeah.
And I think, you know, obviously, you know, there's a place for all sorts of different types of award programs, but I'm just always a big fan of anything that lowers the barrier to entry. I mean, it probably makes my job harder, because you know, businesses maybe don't need us as much if the barrier to entry is lower. But I believe in the power of awards. I want businesses to enter awards. It's so beneficial, and I really hate when that process is made too difficult. So yeah, so I think this is a really good example of when it's you know, made simpler and more straightforward. Obviously, it's still competitive. You know, you've got to make your case really, really strong, which leads me to my next point. I'd love to hear more about the application process, what's required, you know, what our registrants today will need to do should they go down the track of entering. So over to you, Ali.
Okay, yep. I just want to quickly say that point you made about they don't need you. I reckon they still might, not because it's difficult, but because there is an art form in putting your best foot forward. And so the barrier to entry, the unnecessary barriers to entry, we wanted to remove. But the standard of insight and inspiration, as the name suggests, is still, we still want that to be profound. The way the awards are set up is that there are 6 key judging pillars. So we look at the judges will review these applications from you. It's it's a case study based application, and you get 8 questions. Question limit is 400 words a question, so you're not writing reams and reams for every question. And those 6 core pillars are, I've written them down here just so I get them all right: purpose and culture, leadership, well-being, employee voice, employee experience, and inclusion and belonging. And so those are the things that we're really looking at, and that really dovetails into this idea of it being about employer of choice and people first, inspiring workplaces. And so it is a single entry form. You answer these 8 questions, and the judges will review, and they will also provide feedback. So for some organisations, it might be the first award they've ever entered. For a small business or someone that's just never felt they're inspiring or ready, and they do give it a go and they throw their hat in. So the judges will give tailored feedback for every application, and you'll get that. And then there'll also be a list of finalists announced, and then an awards dinner to announce the winners. So that's the process. And you've got the option to include a video, and we recommend you do that if you want to, just to enhance the application or bring it to life in some way, but you absolutely don't have to. It's not mandatory. Yeah. What about, does that raise questions for you, Heather, when you think about that?
Well, it does raise a comment. I think it's super valuable to have judges' feedback. That's actually not common in the award space, which many are shocked by. I am too. Right. I mean, if you're going to be putting yourself forward to be assessed, it seems like an absolute waste to not get feedback. So that's a really powerful differentiator, because a lot of other awards programs don't offer that. And that's, I mean, ultimately that's what we're doing here, right? Awards aren't just a PR exercise. It's also about like taking a spotlight to your business and really examining it closely. And so that feedback's really powerful, because it's like, okay, these are some areas we could work on. You know, it feeds into your strategy. Not just in terms of, you know, how to win an award, but how to be a high performance business, how to be an inspiring workplace, all of that. So that's really powerful. I think, I think that's a major point of difference. I did want to raise that. I did want to ask you a little bit more about some of the just logistical stuff for this award. So the dates, you know, I know there's an early bird deadline and then a standard deadline and different entry fees. Can you talk us through that a little bit, Ellie?
I can, and I wrote those down as well, so I'm going to look at my notes to make sure I'm precise here. And so I guess the headline thing is the awards are actually open now, and I just want to do a quick call out to Avenue Dental on the Sunshine Coast has already just quietly got their very first entry in for the year. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how their journey unfolds with Inspiring Workplaces. So the awards are open. The early bird entries close on the 28th of November. So from the date today we're at now, it's a couple of weeks to go. And the price is 400 plus GST for that, right? So it is really price conscious. Then the standard entry is open until the 25th of February. It's $495 plus GST at that stage. If you're in panic mode and a few days later you need to slip something through a little late, it's $550. We also, I mentioned those 6 judging pillars, and some folks who'll enter these awards will feel like they're really strong against a couple of the criteria. And so you can apply for the overall Inspiring Workplace Award, but you can also opt in for special recognition in one or a few of those categories. And it's $75 to get that extra recognition factored in. And then you might walk away, you know, potentially being an inspiring workplace, or maybe special recognition for something you're excelling at. And for some businesses, perhaps they've invested really hard in wellbeing, and they've put a whole lot of effort into a new strategy and a new approach, and that recognition can really affirm that and is great for your EVP. So that's another way you can approach it. It's case study based, and you can download the entry pack, and will include the link. I think, Heather, you're going to share that with people. It's got all the details that we're looking for. Out of the total points, it's 100 maximum points, 400 words a question at the most. And yes, Green Door can definitely help with this.
I will say, you know, it's as I said, I mean, I love a lower barrier to entry, and I would encourage any business, you know, whether or not they're going to work with someone like us, to consider doing it themselves. But of course, the benefit of working with someone like us is obviously we've got a lot of experience in this, and we bring an outside perspective. So if you work with someone that sits outside your business, they can ask you the right questions to really dig in and see maybe what you don't see when you're too in it. We see this all the time. So with our clients, or, you know, a new prospect might come to us and talk to us about something, and we can see some of the value that they can't see. You know, we'll say, you know, that thing you're doing, it's day to day for you, and yeah, you've mentioned it, but actually, do you realize how competitive that actually is? And have you thought about framing it in this way? Or yes, we can just bring a new perspective to kind of really show, like, benchmark it against what everyone else is doing, kind of know what is going to perform. And when you're in it, you don't always do that. So that's certainly beneficial. So yes, we can certainly help with that, because there is a bit of an art and science to writing an effective award entry, in the sense of being able to tell your story in a way that gets the judge to care about it, and then substantiate it with the right evidence. So you don't want it to read like an essay. You don't want it to be boring. But equally, you need to hit the criteria, and you need to have evidence to back up what you say. So it's a perfect balance between those two kind of approaches. It's a very unique thing, awards writing. So yeah, so we can certainly help if anyone needs that. So I did want to make one point on those deadlines. So the other thing I think that's really important if you're going to go down this track is to make sure, as much as this process is fairly straightforward, it can be quite time consuming, because by the time you go and you collate information about, you know, your business, and you gather the data and you sit down and you write, it can take a bit of time. So we're about 3 weeks out from that early bird deadline. So if you are seriously considering entering, I would strongly recommend you do it now. The other reason for that, obviously, you get your discount, great. You get it squared away before we all break for Christmas, relief. That's the other thing, is if you leave it until February, so let's get real, everyone's on leave. You might need other people in your business to weigh in. If you leave it till Jan, Feb, you might get, you know, closer and closer to that deadline. So I mean, that's fine, obviously, if you can carve out the time, but just I have a strong recommendation for all those considering entering earlier rather than later. It will save you the stress. So yes, definitely consider that.
And I think the other thing that happens too, particularly in like the strategic space, is at this time of year is a good chance to, you know, people are often prepping and thinking about their 2026 strategy and reflecting on, well, how have we gone? Doing a bit of a retrospective is a beautiful way to harmonise a necessary piece of work you have to do to kick off your 2026 and prepare an award submission. So it's kind of a win-win in that it gives you back some strategic work, a bit of a sense of achievement before you finish for the year, and sets you up for next year too.
That's such a good point, because I think that often where people get stuck with award submissions is, firstly, they start them too late, they get stressed about that impending deadline, and then it ends up becoming quite burdensome and time consuming. But the reality is, if we treat it as part of our strategic audit anyway, which is essentially what it is, it's not extra work. You know, you build it into your day-to-day, or you use that submission as an example, as an opportunity for you to do a bit of a structured audit. So if you really want to kind of get a sense of, okay, what are we doing in the employer of choice space? What are we going to do next year? Go through this process, and that kind of gives you a little like quick guide to kind of articulate everything you've done. So it doesn't have to be extra work if you build it into your strategic processes. And it will be a really super valuable process just to do that audit. It always is. Everyone's always quite amazed about what comes out in this process. So that alone is super beneficial. But yeah, do it now. Do it now while you're doing your reflection. It makes a lot of sense. Great. So just to dig in a little deeper into how these awards will be assessed. So you've obviously talked, Ali, about the different pillars and the categorizations and kind of what the judges will be looking for in that. From your perspective, though, if we were to sort of say, okay, well, what differentiates a good submission from a great submission, what comes to mind for you?
Great. I think the awards are a story of inspiration, right? They're not a story of perfection. And so a story that shows a transformational arc is really powerful, even if it starts in a messy place and it doesn't end up somewhere perfect. So if we think about the most inspiring stories, they're not necessarily about what people achieve, but they're often about what people overcome. And so if we think about that in a workplace context, I think that's a really valuable insight that, you know, these awards they're for the little small businesses, they're for the top end of town, but they are for the people who really care about people. And so I think highlighting the things that you're doing in good times and bad is a really great strategy. I think good to great, you know, don't autopilot the submission. There are tempting ways to do so, but you can't prompt or generate true insights about your business and the things you've done well. And I think when I've seen you in action with this before, Heather, and I know that you've got such a great skill for drawing out those achievements and those signs of inspiration and excellence. And so I think the effort in finding that is part of the key to getting a great submission, is what are your little pockets of gold? And I think don't undersell. My other point would be don't undersell yourself. We also notice that so many organizations are waiting until they're ready, and it just doesn't fit with this model because you're never finished.
That's right.
It's such an ongoing journey, isn't it? And so you need to take a leap of faith and test yourself against the market and put your foot forward. And that's the way to really find out how inspiring you are and gather some inspiration from others too. So I think don't undersell yourself. You're probably really inspiring, and you just need to talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I love that it's this constant journey. It's not like you suddenly hit the peak, like you climbed a mountain, you hit the peak. Oh, we're there, and that's it. Yeah, of course not. I mean, the best way to be an inspiring workplace is to be constantly adapting to what's new that's going on, right? And it's no perfect, right? We're always working towards it all the time. And so I think that's a really powerful point of view, and it should serve as a reminder, as you've said, Ali, to every business, you know, out there, that just because they're not perfect or they don't think they're, you know, the top employer of choice doesn't mean they're not an inspiring workplace to work. Yeah, most, you know, it's interesting actually. I get asked a lot in this line of business, do you get a lot of businesses coming to you saying we want to win awards and they don't deserve it? It's actually the opposite. I don't know if it's it might be in Australia, I don't know. But all the time we hear, oh, we'd like to, or like we're a competitive one or whatever. We're not sure we're ready. And then they tell me about what they're doing, and I'm like, well, yeah, that's great. That's award-worthy. And so I think the same goes for being an inspiring workplace. I think a lot of businesses underestimate what they're doing, and as you said, undersell it, when the reality is what they're doing is actually really powerful and competitive. So yeah, you've got to put yourself out there.
Even some of the biggest brands have to do this. You know, they don't see the incredible things they're doing. And we see that in applications, these global brands, national brands, multinationals that haven't realized that they have something special. And then in the process, they do, and they can talk about it. And then it's an incredible way to attract and retain, to your earlier point, their own employees get a sense of pride that they have this credential, that they're considered inspiring. Yeah,
absolutely. Excuse me. Ali, I'd love to hear a bit more about the process for finalists and winners and all of that. So how many businesses will be recognised? What's the process to get there?
We will curate the finalist list based on the number of entries. So Inspiring Workplaces is really going big in Australasia for the first time this year, having been global for over 11 years now. And so we're pretty ambitious. This year we want to see a pretty hefty finalist list. So it could be 25, 50 or 100 finalists. It depends on what we see in the mix, what the caliber is, how many entrants we get. And there are also ways that we sort of segment those results too into different business size categories, also with the special recognition awards for those different pillars that we judge against. Yeah, does that answer that question?
It does. Sorry, I've got a little
a little frog in your throat. Oh dear. Let me pad for a bit then. Yes. So
no, it's
yeah.
fine. It's fine. To that point, I think that's another really good point of difference for applicants, is that obviously it's super competitive, but if you're making a really good case for yourself, you've got a good chance. So, you know, it's not a finite group, or it's not a set number. So if you are competitive and you've got a great story, then you've got a good chance. So I think that's really powerful.
Yeah.
I think, Ali, I'd love to kind of build on that a little bit more. I don't know whether this is the case. Do you guys share stories of former finalists or winners? Is any of that kind of promoted? Because is there anything you can tell us about some of those previous successful applicants?
Yeah, definitely. So that's one of my favorite things about this, because I mentioned earlier that there's this real hunger in people teams and HR folks to connect with others and understand what's working, and leaders as well, like in organizations, executive teams too. And that's something I love about Inspiring Workplaces, is that we have this cycle of learning, and you can learn and be inspired by anybody. And the tax trader story from this year is fantastic. My background, you know, aside from Inspiring Workplaces, I spend a lot of time coaching parents across their career, and particularly in that transition from you're about to go on parental leave or adopt or whatever it might be, and you're back in the thick of it and everything shifts. And tax traders just had such a beautiful story about inclusion for their workplace. One of the examples that I saw from their entry was they have a nanny. So one of their employees came back after parental leave and brought the baby to work. And the transition back to work was so much easier and more productive, because they didn't have that stress of the separation from their child. Now, that might not seem achievable or scalable, but I would really rock the boat on that one and say, like, there's a really easy way to show a great return on investment for something like that. And they have got one of the lowest turnover rates I've seen in a long time in their employees. Wow. And they also have awesome, you know, school holiday programs where the kids are, you know, at the office doing cool activities. And so part of this process is not just to inspire, but be inspired. And I think that's super valuable too.
I love that. I think that is such a good point. You know, learning from what others are doing, what's been successful, and deploying that. I mean, it's a community, isn't it, of figuring out what we can do to better engage our employees, to create an inspiring workplace, to make work more seamless, and to improve performance. I mean, that sounds like an incredible workplace. And if we can just, you know, learn anything small and adopt it in our workplaces, how fantastic is that? I think
yeah, and secretly see if they have any job openings. You know, some of them are going to get a lot of attention now because they're that's right. A great case forward.
I wanted to ask you about something specific. I know one of the areas is inclusion, and it's something we've seen up a lot. So diversity and inclusion comes up a lot in these sorts of types of awards. And some companies, especially smaller or, you know, SME companies, are still figuring out what they can do and how to approach that well. Is there anything you've seen, you know, in any applicants or from your perspective that you know, performs well, like firstly in terms of being a great strategy in D&I and inclusion, or sorry, diversity and inclusion, or that also then, you know, is likely to be recognised in an award of this calibre? Like, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this one's such a nuanced space. My expectation is that our judges are all going to have a different take on judging this category. because there is something infinitely personal about that feeling you get at work. Do I belong here or not?
It's so true.
And so it is a tricky one to get right, isn't it? Because you probably sometimes get some of the effects are a byproduct of the other things you're doing. One of our other judging panels is about employee voice and how well we listen to our people. And it's like a system. You're really not going to have an inclusive workplace with diversity and a sense of belonging if you've tuned them out, if you've tuned out your people.
It's so true.
So,
they're interconnected.
and I think, I also think another reason that it's difficult is that there's this tension between being afraid to get it wrong.
Yeah.
And that can be tough. So, to the point about interconnected, have you got a great culture and do people feel like they're heard? Maybe gives it a safer environment for you to try when it comes to diversity and inclusion, and maybe even make some mistakes. I would hate to think that we'd rather do nothing than be so afraid we'd get it wrong. But, then there are the realities of how brands get perceived. So it's a nuanced space. Next week, I'm in Melbourne with a bunch of businesses and we're talking about this. We're having a roundtable discussion with conversation cards. And I probably will have even more insights to share after that, Heather. But if you are struggling with that as a small business, I can say that the insights you're going to get from other entries if you enter the awards would be pretty profound.
Yeah, and I think you're so right. I think there is a bit of fear about, are we doing enough, or are we going to do the wrong thing in this space? And I think that often that some of these businesses either aren't articulating what they're already doing, is they are doing things, or they haven't gone far enough just out of feeling a bit paralyzed. So I think that being part of this community of businesses and seeing what others are doing can be quite inspirational, to just get a sense of, oh yeah, well, we could start small in that area, or we could work towards that. It's just a particular area that we've seen, especially in the last couple of years, has become a lot more prominent in awards of this type, and SMEs can struggle with it. So yeah, it's a fascinating area. And I did put you up there, so great answer.
No worries.
Okay, well, before we kind of tie things up, I did want to open the floor to any questions. I've just allowed everyone's mics and cameras to be accessible. So if you do have a question, just feel free to jump in. But while we're just waiting for that, I did have another question that has come to me. I think that this is an interesting process in that, I mean, it's obviously going to be engaging HR teams, senior leaders, and also, in an ideal world, the rest of your employees, to kind of get their perspective on how this stuff lands, right? So it's a bit of a collaboration to kind of be able to really explore what makes you an inspiring workplace. Is that your perspective? I mean, do you think that it's be able to sit down and create this submission? It can't just come down to one person, can it? It has to be a bit of a collaboration between all of these teams and their perspectives. And I think that's quite valuable in and of itself, right? To be engaging across teams and departments on this. Yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. It just occurred to me that that's probably going to influence the process, and that alone is quite helpful.
Yeah, I think, it's like Thursday night soccer. This is going to be a team sport, and the achievement then feels so shared, so it really, and thinking about distributed teams too. So people who aren't necessarily in the same physical space, collaborating on an award like this and asking your people, what are the things you think make us inspiring? What are we doing really well? We want to celebrate them. The award then feels less like an achievement that one person has garnered because they slogged away and figured it all out on their own, and much more of a shared accolade that you all get to have together, like winning the soccer comp, for the year on a Thursday night, and then going out to celebrate. This is exactly what it's designed to do, is give everybody a sense of that achievement.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I think that that is really powerful in terms of everyone feeling involved in it and giving their perspective. But it is also a reminder to kind of jump on this process early, because you do need to bring multiple people into it. And that will definitely just make sure that you get, because you want to create obviously the strongest entry you can, and that requires a lot of kind of work and time up front. And so get the right people in the room, get their perspective, map it out. And it's, once you do it, it's time intensive. It requires a lot of careful thought, but it's ultimately straightforward. So don't be discouraged. I think jump in and do it. Yeah, get multiple perspectives. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and that the idea that, I think we get the objection a lot that we know this now. It's like, we're not ready yet. One of the questions is about, what have you got planned for your future? Like, what are your next steps? And that, we care about your aspirations as well. So I think that would be the other thing I would say is, like, you might and ah about this now for a while, thinking, oh, are we not? Are we not? There's only one way to find out.
100%. And speaking to the positioning side of it for a moment, and the reputation and the credibility in the market side of it, if you wait until it's perfect, well, then you've missed that opportunity to use this as a vehicle to leverage you in that way. So it's part of entering this process, and being recognized through this process is part of that strategy to be an employer of choice, to be an inspiring workplace. It's not the end result of that, if that makes sense. So I think that, yeah, you've got to be in it to win it. You've got to give it a go, and it will be a really useful exercise just to go through an audit. And even if you're not successful, at least you have a really good strategy of things to work on. It's always beneficial. I say that for all awards, really, because it really forces you to apply a lens to all aspects of your business, and that's really powerful. Okay, Ali, so I think a final question before we say goodbye to everyone today. Excuse me, sorry for the frog today, everyone. If you could give the audience just one actionable step, one action that they should take to be able to translate their award-winning culture into a fantastic submission for the Inspiring Workplaces, what's the next step that they should take?
Oh, the next step. I mean, I think that you really need to ask your people. I think I've touched on that before, but obviously download the entry pack and have a look and get familiar with what we're asking you to do. But can the voices of your people feature in this workplace you're describing? That is going to help you see your workplace in a whole new light, and it is going to enrich your application as well.
I think that's fantastic. I think the key thing for me would be that, yes, just take that small step. Don't feel discouraged or don't feel daunted. Don't put it off until next year. Like, don't think, well, we've got Christmas and whatever, and we'll just do it when everyone's back from leave at the end of January. Well, then you're not going to have a lot of time. So you're better off taking the steps now. And they don't need to be big steps. Maybe it's literally just booking in some time with various people that you want to be heard in this submission. So and record, like just have a chat like this, talk about the criteria, record it, and you've got all of this valuable data that then can be fed into an awards. You can do all of those this week if you wanted to, and you don't have to talk to everyone, but identify your key people, and then you've got all this data to work from. That's like probably the most daunting part of it. Once you've got that there, then you know what to sit down and write. So yeah, I think that's super valuable. Or of course, if you want help with it, you can talk to us and we would handle that process for you. But the key thing, I think, is just to start. Don't wait. Just take a small step and start. And yeah, once you get into it, you'll find that it's totally doable, and you've got a great story to tell, and you're going to be quite competitive more often than not. So you just got to give it a go. That's what I would say.
Yeah, agree. Nice.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, well, thank you so much, Ali. Really appreciate you joining us today. It was super powerful. For all of you who have attended live today, if you'd like to access the video for this replay, it will be sent to you following today's session. And that will include links to the Inspiring Workplaces Australasia website, where you can download the entry kit, which is a great first step to be able to go and enter. And if you would like to work with us, just respond to the email that will go out to you after this. We are giving a 10% discount to anyone entering the Inspiring Workplaces Australasia Awards. Just cite Inspiring10, which is our code to claim your discount. So that is it. Thank you again, Ali. Really appreciate your time. And again, encourage everyone to get in and enter this award. I think it's such a fantastic opportunity. So I think we should all go and do it.
Thanks, Heather.
All right. Thank you, Ali. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.